Welcome to the Being There podcast. Stories from the road where we keep the rubber side down. These are stories written by my father, Gene McCalmont. Commentary by his son, me, John McCalmont. This is episode number 1, Turning 50. This story was first published in several European motorsports magazines back in 1997, translated into 4 different languages. The first U.S. publication of this story appeared in TexMoto Magazine, May-June of 2000. Here my father explores what it means to pass a milestone in one's life and the changes in perspective it brings. This is Turning 50. It comes to most of us at some point in our lives, and I suppose I was not handling its arrival with my usual self-confidence. Determined not to fit the stereotypical aging rocker image, I decided to do something different for my big day. I wanted no black balloons. Turning 50, for me, was just the beginning. This new February day broke with an unusual coolness in the air and a faint hint of moisture. I loved the morning, and this one was starting off just right. Since I wanted to get an early start for the track, I had loaded my bike on the trailer and packed my riding gear the evening before. Now, with my coffee mug in hand, I made my way out the door, kissing my wife and assuring her that I was going to be okay. After all, I had done this before. The bright red Ducati 900 SSSP sat motionless on the trailer, but its very image stirred feelings of passion. Its curvaceous lines, the uplifted carbon fiber canisters, the massive disc brakes, and an engine that could rip the tires off the rims were what dreams are made of. That bike and I have had a lot of fun together. We have run the wild canyons of the Frio River and pulled G's through the sweeping turns of Texas World Speedway. It was more than just a motorcycle to me. I arrived at the track and unloaded my bike, placing it alongside the Ducatis of Tony Lewis and Jeff Nash, who would ride with me today. I signed the track waiver forms and made my last-minute checks before heading out on the sun-drenched asphalt. Everything was in order. I was ready to ride. As I glanced over the scene in front of me, I began to sense the moment for the first time. The smell of wet grass, burnt rubber, and gasoline gently wandered over me. Birds in distant trees sang their songs of life's celebrations. A rapping sound to the left drew my attention as the porta-potty door swung open and closed, beckoning to me. Gotta remember that one for later. I pulled on my riding suit, fixed the helmet and strap, and slipped my hands into my tight-fitting leather racing gloves. I approached the bike and placed my hands upon the handlebars. The bike slid under me in a familiar and inviting movement. I stood upright as I gently settled into the saddle and placed my finger on the starter button. I felt a little light-headed with anticipation. A little choke, some throttle, and a slight pressure on the button started the motor spinning. Almost instantly, it gasped for air and shook convulsively as spark ignited fuel. The sound. The sound. There was nothing quite like it anywhere. It was a symphony of mechanical music, of raging, visceral explosions punctuated by the staccato of cams, valves, and the tambourine sound of the clutch. It was a thing of power and beauty, surpassed only by function. Together, we would master this track. Tony and Jeff were already on the track, so I let them have some distance before I eased away from the gate. I rolled on the throttle gently at first and let the speed build evenly as I headed towards turn 1. I leaned hard left, then back to the right, downhill towards turn 2, as my speed slowly increased. I leaned to the left again as I pulled some G's through the turn and shot towards the top of the hill. Right, left, hard on the brakes, downshift to second, point at the apex. The pavement disappeared momentarily from underneath me as the bike became airborne. Contact again. The bike raged underneath me as hot rubber dug into the track surface, and I surged forward to turn 4, hard over to the right, The horizon shifted dizzyingly. I was in too hot. I had to hold tight as the bike shook under me, scrubbing off excess speed. The arid smell of burning rubber filled my helmet. I had to let the bike find its own way. I had to trust it as the suspension compressed and protested. I dialed into the throttle to even out the suspension. The bike shook again, biting harder into the asphalt. Let the bike do it, I thought. Fight the panic. Then we were through. I flipped the bike hard to the left into the schoolhouse turn. Sparks flew off the pavement as the left foot peg touched the rough asphalt. I tracked the outside of the turn in complete control, followed by a shower of sparks. I rolled on the power, harder now, as I surged forward up the hill towards the 180s. Downshift, brakes on hard. The front forks collapsed almost to the stops as the front tire slipped into the right in protest. Turn left, stand up, hold throttle, ride the outside rail on the decreasing right-hander. Will this turn ever end? The grandstand flew by my right peripheral vision as I realized I had completed the first 1.2-mile lap. For the next 85 miles, 1.2 miles at a time, life was pretty simple. By the end of the day, the world I knew had all but disappeared. There were no phone calls, no lawyers, no demands. No one. Just me, my bike, and some friends who could frankly give a shit about what I do for a living or my position in life. We were there to do one thing: go as fast as we could, smoothly, in control, and survive. Time passed quickly. Sights and sounds played out their fantasies as man and machine danced through the turns, bending and bleeding into time, speed, and motion. What had been frightening speeds of the morning had given way to greater speed and more control in the afternoon. It was a separation of time from the present, a narcotic of speed, an impassioned embrace of metal, form, and function. It was the zone. At the close of the day, I rolled the Ducati onto the trailer and tied it down for the trip back home. It had lost some of its pristine cleanliness, but the used look, now adorning its curvaceous shape, was somehow more appealing. Life to me had been much the same experience. The hot passion of youth gave way to the appreciation of form and function. It was finding beauty in more than just the physical. It was finding the value of the relationship. It was the value of what had been accomplished rather than the promise of accomplishment. These were the things that are important now. I walked over to where Tony and Jeff were sitting in silence. We finished off the remaining Gatorade. No words were spoken or needed as we just sat there, listening to the wind in the trees. I was feeling satisfied, fatigued, elated, and alive. A cool breeze caressed my face. I could hear the doors in my mind. Come on, baby, light my fire. We're gonna set the world on fire. It was 1960 again, and the world was full of possibilities. Someone said happy birthday. Nothing else was required. That was Turning 50 by Gene McCalmont. I was born in 1968, and this brings back so many memories for me now reading this, words that my father wrote at the age of 57. My father and I used to listen to the Doors together. I remembered when my mother found the Doors box set that I had bought one time. She said, "Oh, that's mine." I said, "No, Mom, that's mine." That's interesting because I listened to that album over and over again when I was pregnant with you. That bike that my dad raced eventually got passed down to me, and I raced it out in California. Willow Springs, streets of Willow, Mulholland, and of course the Angeles Crest Highway. That bike was amazing. Most of my time in Los Angeles, I was on that bike every single day. Every weekend, me and a good friend of mine, Kyle, would head out to Angeles, then go over to Mulholland, and then the next day we would grab our YSR 50s and go race at Imago Speedway. Unfortunately, that Ducati met its demise underneath me. Pushing the limits too fast one time, I lost control and ran into a retaining wall. Broke the frame in half. It was the weekend my dad was coming out to visit me with his new 916. He wasn't mad. He knew the risks we took when we pushed the limits. That week, he and I, with a trailer on the back of my Toyota pickup truck, drove up to Laguna Seca and watched superbike racing all weekend long. Great memories of a son reading the words of his father. Thank you for listening and spending this time with me. If this stirs your soul like it stirs mine and you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and follow the podcast so you don't miss future readings and commentary. All written material featured in this podcast is the original work of my father and used with his permission. The thoughts and opinions I share are my own. This recording is for personal listening only. My voice likeness and performance are protected and may not be recorded, reproduced, or used in any form of AI training, cloning, or synthetic replication without my explicit written consent. Thanks again for being here. Until next time, keep the rubber side down and safe travels.